With over 100 consecutive days of violent rioting across this nation, we can finally tell once and for all who is responsible for all of it. And it's the right-wing media. Yes. This from the MIT Technology Review. How an overload of riot porn is driving conflict in the streets. Weak organization forced right-wing agitators to rely on video and social media. Now they have a machine to spread a narrative of lawless rioting. It's not a narrative of lawless rioting. It is just proof of lawless rioting. So this is from Joan Donovan. I'm not familiar with Joan Donovan, so let's go ahead and start this article here. When Kyle Rittenhouse shot and murdered protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin, he didn't shoot and murder anybody. He did shoot people, but it was out of self-defense. It wasn't just the act of a lone vigilante. No, it wasn't the act of a vigilante at all. It was the act of somebody who was there providing aid to the rioters, medical aid, while also trying to defend shops and trying to keep his friend's auto shop from being looted and burned down to the ground as they were smashing out windows in the cars in the lot. It was a direct consequence of white militia groups organizing on social media. First of all, militias are not white. I mean, sure, maybe most of the people there are white, but they are not identitarians the same way that you on the left are identitarians. Since June, right-wing media makers have recorded and circulated videos of violent altercations at protests in cities including New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and Portland. Really, you're going to put Portland last? Portland is ground zero. It's the patient zero for all of the riots. And they leave out Washington, D.C., Seattle. Honestly, it's been 49 of the 50 major cities, 50 largest cities in America have experienced violence. So she's trying to make it sound like it's just, a couple cities have had a couple incidences. No, that's not the truth. Fed into a media ecosystem with an established bias towards highlighting violence and rioting, the videos have mobilized white militia and vigilante groups to take up arms against Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters. First of all, let me get through this. Let me get through this paragraph here, and then I want to count all of the lies and the misleading statements in just this opening here. So this feedback circuit has created a self-fulfilling cycle where white vigilantes feel justified in menacing and physically attacking racial justice protesters and inspire others to do the same. All right, so let's go through this. When Kyle Rittenhouse shot and murdered protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin, for when he did not murder anybody, it wasn't an act of a lone vigilante. No, it wasn't an act of a vigilante at all. It was the direct consequence of white militia groups organizing on social media. Well, she completely leaves out the fact that these riots are also organized on social media. So let's go ahead and tack that one on there. And let's see. Let's see. Since June, right-wing media makers have recorded and circulated videos of violent altercations at protests. These aren't protests, they are riots in cities including Baltimore, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and Portland. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add that as a fifth because first of all, she puts Portland last. It should be first and foremost. But she's leaving out Seattle. She's leaving out Washington, D.C. She's leaving out that it's happening in most major cities. So she's trying to make it look like it's just a few cities. So that's still dishonest. I'm going to go ahead and make that number 5 here. Fed into a media ecosystem with an established bias towards highlighting violence and rioting. Okay, there we have another lie. Because the media has done everything in its power to hide the fact that this violence is happening. They have been calling them peaceful protests and peaceful protesters the entire time. So here we are at 6. Let's see. The videos have mobilized white militia. All right, so how many times are they going to say white militia? She says white militias here. 3 times in this beginning. I'm going to count that as number 7 because they're not identitarian white militias. You, on the left, are the only ones that view everything through a racial lens. And vigilante groups to take up arms against Black Lives Matter and Antifa. So she puts Antifa in quotes, as if it's not a real thing. There's 8. This feedback circuit has created a self-fulfilling cycle where white vigilante, again, the white. I'm not going to double count these. Feel justified in menacing and physically attacking. First of all, they are not menacing and physically attacking anybody. They are there to defend against destruction of property and destruction of harm, and defend against harm towards people on the right. So there's another lie. Racial justice protesters. Okay, most of these protesters are communists. So this is 10. This is 10 lies, misleading, misframing, lies of omission, all kinds of examples of dishonesty. We have 10 of them in this first opening. I think we are in for the most dishonest article I have likely ever read in my life. You know what? Let's hold on. I want to see who wrote this. So her name is Joan Donovan. Let me open this and see who she is. Really? There in her leather vest, her glasses, her ugly cut hair, looking all tough, nary a jawline to be seen. Joan Donovan, PhD, is director of the Technology and Social Change Research Project at Harvard Kennedy's Shorenstein Center. Director of Technology and Social Change Research Project. Wow. Like, she didn't come into this with a bias. Oh my god. She probably has to get around on a rascal. She's probably huge into the body positivity movement, too. Little tough woman there. In her leather jacket. And her jowls. Oh, God. Just taking one look at her, you can tell she looks like she looks like your prototypical Antifa member or sympathizer. Like, you can tell these lefties just by looking at them. They have no camouflage whatsoever. And there's almost like a conformity through their... How do I say it? They're trying to look different. It's almost like that. There was that article about how in their attempts to be nonconformist, hipsters end up all looking the same, and it was talking about how the picture, and actually the picture that they used for the headline of that somebody sued them for using his likeness, and it turned out it wasn't even him. Even he couldn't tell himself apart. So the role of video. Research on social movements has long focused on the ways that the media mobilizes people to take direct action. Yeah, they have been mobilizing the left to take direct action. It's not just the media; it's also the media politicians. Kamala Harris saying, "Don't let up, don't stop." It's Hillary Clinton saying, "You will have no civility until Trump is out of office," or something like that. You don't have a return to civility. There was something along those lines. I mean, it's both the politicians and the media who are basically one and the same. I mean, the media is mostly a propaganda wing of the Democratic Party at this point. So let's see. Audio and video clips from protests can evoke an emotional and visceral reaction in those who see them. Yeah. Have you ever seen a movie? That's the whole purpose. Well, way to state the obvious there. Over the last decade, we've seen this emerge most often with calls for racial and economic justice. Racial justice and economic justice are code words for Marxist justice. Sorry, I meant to turn my phone off. Let me silence that real quick. All right, hopefully that's enough of that. This past summer, the recorded murder of George Floyd. First of all, George Floyd was not murdered. Sure, did the police do things wrong? Yeah, absolutely. But we also have video now of they tried to put him in the back of a cop car, and he said, "No, I have claustrophobia. Just hold me on the ground," and that's what they did. And then we also have the coroner now saying that he died of an overdose. So maybe you could say he was murdered by his drug dealer. No, you can't even say that, really. Just one in a seemingly endless line of merciless and vicious events perpetrated by police against black people. An endless line of merciless and vicious events perpetrated by police against black people. So she's acting as if police brutality happens only to black people, despite the fact that in over 350 million police encounters over the course of a year, with about 10 million arrests, only 41 unarmed people were killed by the police. And of those 41, only 9 of them were black. I mean, it's so easy to pick apart the narrative that these people are putting out there, and then they're trying to say that we're the ones trying to create a narrative. No, you're just pissed off that we're countering your narrative. You're sitting there whining because you don't get to just have your own propaganda wing that everybody just mindlessly believes. That's not going to happen. You know, this person probably wants freedom of speech taken away because they don't want anybody to be able to, you know, counteract their narrative, which is so blatant. Let's see. And it isn't just racial justice protests that benefit from the outrage caused by video. I'm not going to repeatedly point out that these aren't racial justice actually, you know, I'm going to point it out one time and I'm not going to point it out again. These are not racial justice protests. We can see from them chanting "Death to America," waving communist hammers and sickles, the hammer and sickle flags, burning the American flag. And I even saw a video that came out just the other day. It was all white Antifa people blocking the street, and this black lady pulls up and she wants to get through, and they call her a racial slur. Let's just say they called her a bigger niche. But instead of a marketing term, it was a racial slur. You can figure that, you can do the math from there. And what they actually called her, because it was disgusting. And we see that all the time. Ask any black conservative, who are the biggest racists? And it's always the people on the left. As soon as they step off that plantation, that ideological plantation that they have tried to keep blacks on for decades now, they're called Uncle Toms. And you know, I'm not gonna go into the names because I don't want to get in trouble for YouTube just for calling out calling this stuff out. But you know they will. You know, just like Papa John's. If you don't know the story behind Papa John's, Google it. He was calling out something somebody said. And they're like, well, what did he say? And he said it. And they're like, oh, you're fired. It was a total gotcha moment. So I'm not going to keep correcting them on racial justice protests. We know that these are not racial justice protests. They are communist insurgencies under the guise of racial justice protests. So it isn't just a racial justice protests that benefit from the outrage caused by the video. In September, can't talk right now. In September 2011, very few people cared about Occupy Wall Street. A bunch of hippies, anarchists, and freaks were sleeping in the park in Manhattan. But after a video of a young white woman being kettled and pepper sprayed by NYPD officer Anthony Bologna, yeah, they called him Tony Bologna, ricocheted across social media, thousands of people set up Occupy encampments across the globe. Until that moment, the movement was blah, blah, blah. I don't really care. All right, so, you know, we'll continue to go through this because I'm sure there's just going to be a lot of lies to call out. But I don't really care about Occupy Wall Street. That's long gone. Although I guess you could really say it was kind of the roots of the whole Antifa movement, it wasn't the roots of the Antifa movement. That goes all the way back to Germany. But the uprisings that are kind of continuing, the escalation of the communist black bloc insurgencies that we're seeing. Until that moment, the movement was not being widely covered in the mainstream press, but the video's circulation compelled larger media organizations to pay attention. We don't know what would have happened in the absence of that video, but over the course of 4 years I spent interviewing Occupy protesters about the video that recalled it as a motivating factor for getting them out of the streets. Yeah. Okay. The visuals can be just as motivating for the right wing, perhaps even more so. Because right-wing reactionaries do not have the same kind of experience in organizing street protests as the left. Yeah, because we're not collectivists. We pretty much just want to be left alone. You do your thing, let me do mine. We stay out of each other's way. So it's not really prone to collectivism and organizing the same way that communist agitators and communist organizers and community organizers have been doing since the 70s, or really the late 60s. So let's see, where was I? Experience in organizing social protests let's go ahead and just call it the far left. They instead rely heavily on social media, particularly Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, to mobilize crowds. Their efforts to counter the wave of public support for Black Lives Matter protests, riots, again, I'm not going to keep correcting that, have made extensive use of this tactic. As a scholar of social movements and... Listen to this. As a scholar of social movements and media studies, I see an alarming split between the types of content consumed by right-wing reactionaries and left-wing social justice advocates. The framing. And also, she's trying to say, as a scholar of this stuff, this is that whole expert phenomenon that I talked about in a video yesterday. How if you call yourself a scholar, or if you're told somebody is a scholar or an expert, you're supposed to zip your mouth and listen to them and take what they say because they know more than you. This person, we saw through 10 lies just in the intro paragraph. I don't think we can trust her and take her word on it because she's a scholar. She's a PhD. Most of these people are so brainwashed they couldn't be a scholar of a kindergarten class. I'd like to see these people go up against, Socrates and, all the ancient scholars who actually knew how to use the Socratic method and, proper thought, proper critical thinking. Go up against them, they would destroy these people. The fact that this person, this absolutely dishonest person, gets to call themselves a scholar means that being a scholar means absolutely nothing in today's day and age. Quote, right-wing reactionaries. We react because the left has infiltrated all of our cultural institutions. All we can do is react. We have no power within the institutions. All we can do is react from the outside. I mean, we're banned from Hollywood if we're conservative. Most of the media won't hire you if you're conservative, or you have to be a pretend conservative, but still a never-Trumper. And left-wing social justice advocates. Social justice, these people need to read the book by Thomas Sowell, The Quest for Cosmic Justice, because that's really what it comes down to. And the only way to get this social justice that they're talking about is this Harrison Bergeron type situation. Another short story you can read in one sitting, Harrison Bergeron. And I know I've talked about Harrison Bergeron before on here, but for those who haven't seen those videos, it's a short story by Kurt Vonnegut where everybody is weighted. By their abilities are weighted down. So if you're fast, they put weights on your feet so you can't run as fast. If you're more intelligent than the common denominator, they put something that yells in your ear so you can't think straight. All kinds of different things to basically create a common denominator of ability among all people. That's what these people are really advocating. They're looking for cosmic justice. They want, and they call it, or Thomas Sowell calls it cosmic justice because it's just the natural order of things. It's a natural order that some people are going to be more talented. Some people are going to be smarter. Some people are going to be faster. Some people are not going to have many talents at all, while others are going to have many talents. You can't incorrect cosmic justice. Or you can't incorrect the natural order of things. That's why it's called cosmic justice. Given the way the media accounts shape public perceptions about the protests and riots, and define who has the recourse to the legitimate use of violence. Okay, so hold on. Let me reread this sentence. Given the way the media accounts shape public perceptions about protest and define who has recourse to the legitimate use of violence. This is radical right here, because we know who has legitimate use of violence. It's anybody defending themselves. It's anybody who is counteracting somebody who is aggressing somebody else. She's trying to gaslight and say that because we're outraged, that we have a legitimate use of violence against people who have done nothing to us. And they're trying to say that they don't have the right to she's sulking that they don't have the right to say, well, this is legitimate too, and us be like, okay, yeah, I guess it is legitimate. No, because everything about our culture says that is illegitimate use of violence. But they want to overthrow our culture so that they can just do damn near whatever they want. The kinds of content shared with these hyper-partisan media systems. First of all, I think she's only talking about people on the right here, talk about hyper-partisan media systems. But, look at the mainstream media. That is hyper-partisan. 92% negative coverage of Donald Trump when it doesn't reflect the population of America. America, support for Donald Trump is probably upwards of 60%. So they're only being represented by 8% of the media. And I'm not using polls. I'm just guessing. I'm just using what I can gauge, because you can't trust the polls either that are put out by the media. Support for Donald Trump is definitely higher than what the polls and what's reported. All you have to do is look at all these flotillas and everything else that's going around, just the massive support, all the marches, The Save the Children's March, I mean, you can see the video from when I went out to that. We had thousands of people marching down Hollywood Boulevard. It was incredible. So the support for Donald Trump is huge. Meanwhile, Joe Biden holds a town hall and can't poll 6 people. Oh, yeah, he can't poll 7 people. He could poll 6. Impressive. Given the way the media... Okay, so... Hyperpartisan media systems play a powerful, yet often invisible role in mobilizing white vigilante groups. She keeps going back to racializing everything. And then she wants to talk about racial justice when she views the world entirely racially. You can't do that. You can't do that and get the outcome she thinks she's going to get. As if people aren't going to get upset by the fact that everything is being divided upon racial lines when we have spent decades in this country getting past all that. Trying to view people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And now she is going right back to, 1964 Democrats, or I guess 1960 Democrats, whatever. And she's just instead against white people. So it's all good. You flip the coin over and the other side's, it's a completely different coin now, right? No. So the use of riot porn. Since the George Floyd protests, conservative media outlets, including Fox News, particularly Carl Tuckerson and Sean Hannity, One America News, Glenn Beck's Blaze TV, and right-wing YouTubers, hey, she's talking about me, have been covering Black Lives Matter and other left-wing protests daily, specifically highlighting instances of violence, fighting, and property damage. This coverage has come to dominate the right-wing narrative in a new way, flipping the script to suggest that black protesters... I'm going to finish this sentence before I go into my commentary on this whole paragraph. Demonstrating because they fear police violence are themselves a threat to white people. Wow, wow, wow. All right, so the fact that we can report on it daily, report on violence daily, the fact that there's new videos of violence for us to share every single day should go and tell you something about the nature of these protests. That they're not peaceful protests. They are violent riots. The fact that we have that to show every day should be all the proof that we need. These people, they don't even realize that when the mask slips for themselves. Specifically highlighting instances of violence, fighting, and property damage. Yeah. So this coverage has come to dominate the right-wing narrative in a new way, flipping... It's not a narrative. It's just us showing what's going on. We're showing the news. Just because we're seeing it, and it's changing our understanding of what these protests really are, and shaping it to realize that they're not protests, they're riots. This is really just her crying about them losing control of the narrative. That's what this is about here. Suggests that black protesters, okay, again, look at how racialized everything is with her. So all of the protesters are black? No, most of them are white. Most of them are white. And when she's talking about these white vigilante groups, I guarantee you she's also including groups like Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys. Guarantee you she's including those, which are definitely... I mean, some of the militias do look like they're mostly white people, but you look at the Proud Boys, it is a very eclectic mix of people. In fact, it's led by an Afro-Cuban named Enrique Tarrio. So much for these white vigilante groups. But just like that video that I told you about before, it was a bunch of white people stopping a black woman in the street and throwing racial slurs at her. She views everything, and she's gaslighting. It's a complete lie that they're all black protesters. Just because you're protesting under the banner of Black Lives Matter doesn't make all the protesters black. And what is she, Rachel Dolezal? Sean King? Fake blacks? White people pretending to be black? We just had another news story come out about this Jewish woman, just white Jewish woman who's pretending to be black for years and ended up coming out and canceling herself. So yeah, and also demonstrating because they fear police violence. That's not why they're demonstrating. We know that they're talking about burning America to the ground. They're saying revolution, nothing less. That is not out of a fear of police violence. That is about a desire to burn America to the ground. Literally, they're saying revolution, nothing less. And that are themselves a threat to white people. Again, with the racialism. Mainstream media bias towards covering violent protests is well studied, best encapsulated by saying that if it bleeds, it leads. You know, historically, that is true. But we are in a completely different set of circumstances where the media has been absolutely covering for all this. Not covering it, but covering for it, covering it up. They have been doing everything that they can to hide the violence because we are in an election year and they know that these violent riots are helping Donald Trump and they want to do everything that they can to prevent that from happening. They've been gaslighting us not as hard as this Joan woman is here. What's her name? Joan Donovan. I mean, this is one of the most outright dishonest things I've ever read in my life. So most protests are largely peaceful, but citizens gather, grieve, and leave is not a story at all. Okay, I've been seeing this go around a lot recently. They're saying 93% of the protests are peaceful, as if that's an accomplishment. That 7% of your protests turn into violent riots and looting and burn down buildings. Oh, yeah. We're a great car company. 93% of the brakes on our cars work. Does that fly? No. Saying this 93, they are trying to prey on their assumption that we're stupid. That we're going to sit there and say, oh, 93, that's a high number. Well, this isn't such a bad problem. Despite the fact that we've seen that they've happened in 49 out of 50 cities, and that you don't need, if 7% of them, and we've had over 2,000 of these, and 7% of them have turned violent. That's a lot of damn violence. And we don't want that. Uh-oh. Computer issues. Hold on. Oh, okay. I don't know what just happened with my computer there. So sorry. Let me get back to this here. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they've been pushing that whole largely peaceful thing. But yeah, 93% out of thousands of protests, not a good number for not being violent. So let's see. But citizen. Okay. So that's not as. This directs a disproportionate amount of attention across the entire media ecosystem to violent protesters. Yeah! Because when they come to your house, when they come to your neighborhood, people need to know what's going on. They need to know that there's a threat. Now, with social media as a broadcast system, the right-wing media has upped the ante. I'd say that the left has upped the ante when they started burning down buildings, attacking people in the streets, knocking out car windows, flipping them over, setting them on fire. I'd say they've upped the ante. But there's no accountability on the left. No accountability. According to analysis I conducted using Media Cloud, a research tool from MIT and Harvard. Oh, so now we know it's trustworthy. Because it's MIT and Harvard. Right-wing media outlets wrote 5 to 6 times more articles about Seattle's Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone than did center or left media. That should go to show you that the left is covering this up. Like, she doesn't even realize the message that people are perceiving. She's saying one thing. She thinks that she's making this a point about right wing. It's actually making a larger point about the left. What has been a minor storyline among left-wing audiences has been dramatically overemphasized by right-wing media because these protests provide plenty of visceral content for online content creators. No, it's been a minor storyline among left-wing audiences because left-wing audiences are cheering it on. They don't want it to be mainstream news cover. They don't want to be covered by the mainstream news because they know that would help Donald Trump. Which makes me wonder, how stupid are these people to keep doing this, despite the fact. So let's see. Overemphasize. Well, that's your opinion. by right-wing media because the protests provide blah, 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 blah. Okay, in one case, Fox News manipulated photos to make protesters look more ominous and threatening, while other right-wing... they do these manipulated photos. I mean, what do they do? Like, just enlarge it or, up the contrast on it? They've done this manipulated photos business before where it was just really stupid. While other right-wing sometimes they actually do that with memes as well. I'm tempted to click on this link, but this video is already getting really long. While other right-wing outlets falsely reported that the occupying protesters were extorting local businesses. They were. That's not a false report. That's not a false report at all. They were, in Chaz, they were, hold on, yeah, yes, oh yeah, so let's see, yeah, they were talking about the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone Center, and so, yeah, what was it, I completely missed the point that I wanted to make previously. Yes, there is a reason why communist agitators taking over 6 blocks of a major city and kicking out the police, it should have been on every major story. It should have been on every channel. My computer freezing there messed me up in my analysis on this paragraph here. Yeah, the fact that we allowed 6 blocks of a major city right in the center of the city get overrun and become an autonomous zone that call themselves Free from America, breaking out off of America, should have been the biggest story on every news network. The fact that the center, or it wasn't the center, it was all the left, that was a minor story to them, goes to show you how radical our media is. But she can't see that. She probably, just like she can't see her toes. Sorry, I know that was a low blow, but I'm getting pissed off by how dishonest she is. All right. So let's see. These narratives have been intensified and supplemented by the work of right-wing adversarial media makers like Elijah Schaffer and Andy Ngo, who collect videos of conflict at public protests and recirculate them to their online audiences. Adversarial media. That basically means she's calling them right-wing adversarial media makers because they are just countering the mainstream narrative, which is built on lies. Anything that goes against the mainstream narrative is right-wing and adversarial. Maybe the left-wing narrative is adversarial to the American ethos and to the spirit of America. You ever considered that, Joan? Both have even gone undercover by posing as protesters to capture footage of their channels, seeking to name and shame those marching. Their videos are edited, decontextualized, and shared among audiences hungry for a new fix of riot porn, which instantly goes viral across the right-wing media ecosystem with the aid of influential pundits and politicians, including President Donald Trump. So she's saying that they're edited and decontextualized. You don't need a whole lot of context for people burning down buildings and flipping cars and going on riots. We don't need any kind of context where we're going to say, oh, okay, I get it. Never mind. This is appropriate. No. We don't. There is no context that actually makes that okay. So riot porn is different from videos of abuse and violence carried out by police. Oh, of course it is. Of course, because with us it's different. By police, and we should not confuse one for the other. In the recording of the George Floyd murder, the video mobilized hundreds of thousands of people outraged that George Floyd's killer had not been arrested. With riot porn, what moves someone from watching to showing up is the... Hold on. What moves someone from watching to showing up? Is she trying to say that the videos of the police killing George Floyd isn't what motivated people to show up in the streets en masse? These people are insane. Showing up is the potential for participating in a violent altercation. Maybe, just maybe, these people wouldn't be showing up if the people on the left were not already out on the streets rioting. You know, there's the whole chicken before the egg, which came first, the chicken or the egg? This is not one of those situations. The leftist riots definitely came first. The right coming out to defend against the riots came second. This is not a chicken and egg scenario. All right. With riot porn, what moves someone from showing up... Okay, the motivating factor is the hope to live out fantasies of taking justice into their own hands, a la Dirty Harry, the film series about a rogue cop who shirks protocol and murders at will. First of all, you are attributing motive that you don't know, which is disgusting. You cannot tell people what their motivations are, especially when there are clear motivations for people that actually want to go out and defend against these rioters who do not think these riots are justified just because you do. And second of all, don't go after Dirty Harry. Don't go after Clint Eastwood. Murders at will. Come on. It's Dirty Harry. Judging by these reactions shared by followers of right-wing influencers, riot porn further enrages and traumatizes these... First of all, we're not traumatized. We're pissed off. It's the left that gets traumatized. Yeah, we don't get traumatized that way. These audiences from afar, inflaming their perceptions of risk and danger. In chat rooms, they're trying to act like the videos aren't real. We know the danger is real because we're seeing the damn videos. I mean, these people think we're retarded. In chat rooms, watchers actively cheer as cops and other aggressors brutalize Black Lives Matter activists. No, we cheer when they brutalize commie agitators who are committing violence against us. They picked this fight. We're just out there finishing it. They just want us to let them run loose and destroy America. They go out swinging bats, and then the moment somebody punches them, why'd you do that? So sick of this shit. These emotional reactions help develop unshakable trust between the partisan content creators and the content consumers. Alright, there's a lot more to go with this, and this video is already getting long. I just had to point this out because this is some of the most dishonest garbage I have ever seen from this woman right here. Yep. That beauty queen right there. So anyways, guys, if you haven't already, like the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, please share the video. And also, if you haven't already, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. And also, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. And please, don't buy into this bullshit.